Hello everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of ranking all of the classes that I have taken at Cornell. So if you have not seen part 1, go ahead and click up there, do it really quick, and then you can come back to this one and see where we left off. So this video is really going to focus on my junior and senior year classes. So we're just going to hop right into it. First class I took junior year, first semester, was my final Arabic class that I had to take. Was Intermediate Arabic 1. It was with the same professor for Elementary Arabic 2. So the torture did not stop there, unfortunately. And I was really debating a whole lot if I should even take this class, if I should put myself through this pain. I was like, I can't exactly take a whole 3 semesters of a completely different language. I felt like that was way too much. So I decided I was going to take it pass-fail so that way I didn't have to stress as much and I could really just like ignore my professor and not even bother with her and not worry about, I feel bad saying this, but like not really worry about learning Arabic super well. I just needed her to pass. I just needed to pass and I was done. I will say, I feel like her commentary on my performance was less in this class than it was in the previous class. Maybe she read my, what's it called? Student review. What's it called when you give professors comments? Brain said we're not going to work today. Whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about. Because I did roast her a little bit. So maybe she actually took that to heart and said, oh, I shouldn't be mean. Yeah, you shouldn't be mean. So I'm going to say I hate it here. I don't know. This one's like in between and I hate it here. Because like if I'm really judging the class based on like, the professor and the coursework and all that stuff, I truly hate it here. But the fact that I gave up and I said I am not going to try to get an A in this class, I'm just going to sit here and do the bare minimum so I can pass it, makes me say, I really didn't let the stress get to me that much, which was good. So somewhere in between, I'll put it in I hate it here. I also started taking biochem. So Cornell has a couple different options when it comes to biochem. I decided to split it up between 2 semesters. So first semester of biochem, this was really like what I would call like classic biochem, like amino acids and different cycles that you have to learn, like Krebs cycle and cellular respiration and all of those things. I honestly didn't hate learning about this stuff. I thought it was kind of interesting. It was a lot of memorization, but I really saw the usefulness in learning this material, which was nice for a change. I will say my professor was very chaotic. It was very hard to follow him at times. He was kind of all over the place. And he was also very opinionated, so he would share his opinions a lot, which like isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it was just a thing that is there. So I'm gonna say that she was chill. She was pretty chill. I know I'm gonna have to take it again, and I am not looking forward to taking it again. The only thing is I would like to take it with a different professor. If I had a different professor, then this would probably be incredible. I would take it again. I also took Intro to Behavior, which is the other class that is required for the neurobiology concentration. So there are 2 classes that you have to take, and then you just have to take like 7 credits worth of other classes, and you can pick from those. So Intro to Behavior, I will say, once again, not my cup of tea. It was really all about animal behavior, which I could care less about. I am here for human behavior, not for animal behavior. So it was incredibly boring. I kind of want to say I hate it here just because I went to every class and I sat in the back. I basically slept through the class. Again, it was a class that was taught by like every professor in the neurobiology department. So every 2 weeks we would have a new person teaching us, which was a lot. I just didn't like her. Oh, and I will say like some of the concepts we learned were really stressful, like game theory. Ew, I hate game theory. That thing was stressful. There were a couple like random things of like experiments of trying to figure out where birds would fly and stuff. And it was very weird, and I'm like, why am I learning this? This is not important to my career, so yeah, that's where she's gonna go. I also did research during the semester for credit, so that was like another thing. I'm not gonna rank that because it wasn't really a class. So the final class I took this semester was Physics 1. Hot take, I actually really liked physics, specifically Physics 1. I just really like math. I think math is a lot of fun. So again, being able to do math was really exciting. And I was actually pretty good at Physics 1. Honestly, I would take Physics 1 again. My professor was fine. I honestly didn't feel that stressed in physics, which was really exciting. Probably because I just clicked with it really well. I feel like every pre-med hates physics, but I thoroughly enjoyed physics. So now, second semester of junior year, this was the semester where we had to transition online halfway through because of COVID, which added some stress, not gonna lie. So I took physics 2. I will say I found physics 2 a lot harder than physics 1, especially just like conceptually. Like electromagnetism is one of those things, I know it exists, and I know like technically I can see its effects with like magnets and stuff, but it just feels fake, and I don't know how to explain that other than it just feels like someone made it up. So I feel like this was really hard to wrap my head around. Circuits, I hate circuits. I know we need electricity, but I hate circuits. And then also having to do half of this class online and basically teach myself physics was really, really difficult. I'm honestly gonna say I hate it here. It was not a good time. I also took my second semester of biochem, so this is more like DNA stuff and like, yeah, it was basically just about DNA, which like is okay, I guess. I personally don't love that kind of stuff. I don't know, I'm trying to think of this class. It wasn't too difficult. I'm gonna say she was chill. It was kind of boring. Like, I don't know, stuff like that, like really like molecular bio stuff is stuff that on one hand it is cool because I know without this stuff I would not be alive, but also on the other hand, in my career I am never probably going to be looking at DNA. I don't know, I care more about the whole person than the molecular level. I don't know, so it was fine. This is also when I like really started looking at the liberal arts distributions and those kind of random classes that I have to take. And so I took a class about genocide, which I know is a very weird topic to just like throw into my undergraduate experience. I thought, hey, like this would be an interesting class to take. And it was very interesting. It was a lot of times, but it was definitely eye-opening. I didn't know about half of the stuff we learned. It was very interesting to see all of that. This is also the largest paper I wrote in my undergraduate career. I wrote like an 18-page paper about the Nanjing massacre, which was really interesting to learn about also. I will say my professor, he was kind of boring. He was very monotoned, so he wasn't that fun to listen to, and I definitely fell asleep in class several times. So I'm gonna put her in the section. That paper caused me a lot of stress, I will say. That paper was a pain. I was very proud of it once she was done, but like an 18-page paper, that's a lot of pages. Once again, I did research this semester, so that was also more credits to take. The last class I took was adult psychopathology. Incredible. Incredible. If you go to Cornell, or if you ever go to Cornell, you must take adult psychopathology. It's in the psych department. It is with Harry Siegel. I'm going to shout out this professor. I love Dr. Siegel. He is literally incredible. He is such an icon. He's so funny. He makes jokes during class, and he's also like a practicing clinician, which is really exciting. So he actually knows what it's like to work with the patients and to like see the conditions that he is teaching us about, which is so refreshing because we don't have many people in the medical field who teach at Cornell. This was really an exciting class. I will say it's kind of weird. We start off a class talking about Freud, which you could either hate or you could kind of like. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of interesting. And then we also like, we go through all of the disorders in the DSM, and we also read Hamlet, which is like a random thing. But like we had students read it, and so like they would like come down. It was in this big auditorium, so they would come to the front and they would and like Dr. Siegel would assign everyone parts, and we would read Hamlet, which was really funny. I thoroughly enjoyed reading Hamlet in high school, so I was happy to read it again. He's an incredible professor. I absolutely loved him. I was so sad that I had to take part of this class online because it was such a fun class, and I felt like I wasn't going to learn as much because it was now online. And like for the final, he gave us case studies, so we got to, I don't want to say like we practiced diagnosing people, but that's basically like fake people. That's basically what we did. So that was really exciting as someone who like wants to go into psychiatry. So we've gotten down to senior year, first semester senior year, completely online because of COVID, which was really sad, but also it was okay. My last 2 semesters, I had basically done all of my major requirements. So I was just trying to take some like classes I thought were interesting, and I also really wanted to expose myself to some of the courses I would have to take in medical school, because I watch a lot of medical school vlogs, and I feel like a lot of people say that it's nice when you've already seen that material once. For example, like people say immunology is one of the hardest units to go through, so I wanted to like go ahead and have some exposure to it, and like I'm interested in it, so why not? So first class we're going to talk about is immunology. Honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed immunology. I think it's really interesting. This is probably the only case in which I thought learning about things on a cellular level was really cool. I also had a really great professor. She was so sweet, and she was so good at explaining these very difficult concepts. She was incredible. So that was a class that like I thoroughly enjoyed going to every day. It was great because we were also learning about immunology in a pandemic, so it was very relevant. We were talking about vaccinations and stuff when several companies were trying to develop vaccinations, so it was really cool to kind of like see this stuff in action in the world. Next class I took was virology. Also very relevant to the pandemic. It was also really cool to take these two classes at the same time because they were very interconnected with each other. What I will say is virology wasn't as exciting. I really didn't care about it. We had some very confusing material, and yeah, it really wasn't a great class. I really would not take it again. It wasn't a class that like I necessarily hated. It was very low stress, but it was also very boring. And the only reason I took it is because my friend was like, we've had a class together every semester, like we need to have a class together this one. And he was gonna take virology, and I said, why not? That was a mistake on my part. It was fine. It was just a very boring class, and I honestly don't feel like I learned a whole lot. Next class I took was hormones and behavior. Once again, taking a behavior class. Dumb on my part. Out of all of the options, I needed a neuroscience class this semester, and out of all the options, this one seemed like the most interesting, the most like related to biology and being pre-med and something that I might have to deal with in my career. So again, it was a lot of learning about animals, not a whole, it was like, well, I take that back. It was probably like a 50-50 split about learning people and animals. So like part of the class was relevant to me and what I'm interested in. Part of the class really wasn't, but it was a pretty chill class. I'm gonna say that she was chill. The assignments, it was low stress. There were no exams, and we got to do like an independent research project that we turned into a poster at the end of the semester, and I did mine about schizophrenia, so that was a very exciting project to do. She was pretty chill. She was just kind of there, you know, but some of the stuff was interesting. So I also took astronomy, which was honestly, it was a pretty cool class. I think I would take it again. Some of the math was really difficult. Tell me why I struggled with that math. It was a lot. Part of the class I felt like I wasn't learning a whole lot. We were in discussion sections doing worksheets on math problems, which didn't feel really relevant because we wouldn't learn any of the math in class. It was literally taught in discussion sections, so it felt like one of those things where you're just adding extra material for no reason. But like the actual stuff we learned in class was really interesting. I don't know anything about space. I know the planets, and that's literally the extent to my knowledge. So learning about the life cycle of stars was really cool. Learning about like cosmic distances was really cool. I never knew that like by looking at a star you're looking back in time, and like what you're seeing is not the current state of the star. That really blew my mind. That still blows my mind. This semester I also took genetics. This was like the other requirement that I still had to take for my major. This gave me nightmares. Trying to learn genetics online, terrible. I don't think I would have done any better if it was in person, but I think it caused extra stress because it was online, and I didn't feel as supported in learning genetics. I can't tell you anything that I learned in this class. I really feel like I didn't. I really slid by. We barely made it out of there alive. Every single test and every single quiz, I was like in my room crying while taking it because I was so stressed. I was like, I don't know what's going on. So she was terrible. And then the last class that I took this semester was genetics lab. Funny enough, I loved genetics lab. It was completely unrelated to genetics lecture. Thank God. But let me tell you, genetics lab is probably one of my favorite courses I've taken at Cornell, because we really go through the whole process of mutagenesis, which is something that I keep reading about and I keep seeing in scientific papers. We made a knockout of this organism, but I never really knew like what that meant. And so seeing what actually goes into making a knockout organism was really exciting. I feel like I learned more about genetics in the lab than I did in the lecture course. It was a whole lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun. I will say I took it online. The whole lab was online, so we didn't actually get to like do anything or like work with Drosophila, which was in my benefit because I am deathly terrified of bugs and I didn't have to work with flies, so I really lucked out. But nonetheless, the professor, incredible. She's literally an angel. She's the sweetest person in the world. I also had a really great undergraduate TA when I took the class. She was incredible. And ultimately, like, I became a TA for this class because I had such a good experience. And I absolutely love TAing the class also. I thoroughly enjoyed that class. We have reached my final semester at Cornell, my second semester of senior year. Like I said, I was TAing during this time, so that was also some credits. First class we're going to talk about anatomy and physiology. This is a class, it was not required for my major, but I was like, I am going to have to do this in medical school one day. And honestly, I didn't want my first exposure to anatomy to be in medical school when I have to learn things at such an in-depth level. So I thought it would be beneficial to go ahead and take it here. I'm gonna put it at an eh, because honestly, I did find the material really interesting. We talked a lot about like illnesses and disorders, which I really appreciated as a pre-med student, LOL. And it was actually really cool to learn about like the body, but my professor was terrible. She was so terrible. She was like mean. And this class was so unorganized because it was online. They would delete Piazza posts, which is weird. They were so bad at monitoring Piazza, which is like a place where like students can ask questions, that like half the questions on there just weren't answered. And it's like, what is the point of having this if you're not going to help us? So it was very not well managed or organized, but whatever. Next class I took was pharmacology. I'm gonna put this in an eh. I found some of the stuff interesting, some of the other stuff was not so interesting. And because this was a class where everything was open note, I feel like I didn't learn a whole lot, which is kind of unfortunate, but also like, because I feel like this pharmacology is going to be really different from the pharmacology I experienced in medical school, because it wasn't a lot about memorizing drug names and like mechanisms and stuff like that. So I don't know, it was okay. Another class to fulfill my last distribution requirement, it was called Living in an Uncertain World, and it was basically a class about like risk and risk theory and a bunch of different like disasters that have happened throughout human history. So like we talked about fires and like nuclear power and like power plant explosions and stuff like that. We talked about like technology and like surveillance and policing. Overall, it was a really interesting class. I will say it was a lot of reading, which I don't love to read. I'm also a really slow reader. And I also find it's really easy for me to get distracted. So like reading is not my biggest strength. But she was pretty chill. A lot of the stuff was really interesting, honestly. But I think like tragedies and stuff like that are very interesting. So yeah, it was cool. And then the very last class I took at Cornell was Gender and Psychopathology. Very much similar to adult psychopathology. This class was incredible. This professor was the sweetest professor in the world. She was so accommodating. Literally, the semester was so stressful and she was so nice. And she was like, if you need extensions, just tell me, no questions asked, you got it. I will do anything I can to support you. And I was like, thank you, ma'am. That is what we need in this very stressful time. Not professors deleting our Piazza posts. But she was so sweet. This class was really interesting. It was, again, a lot of reading, but like it was really cool to learn about gender differences in different psychopathologies and like how they present and how people deal with them, whether it is like patients who have that disorder or it's like the clinician side of things or it's like society as a whole. So this stuff is really cool. It was honestly just a really chill class. This is another class that like if you're at Cornell, I would highly recommend that you take gender and psychopathology if you have any interest in that kind of thing at all. It was a very cool class. Alrighty, so this is my final ranking. I truly cannot believe that I am done with school, at least for a couple years while I'm in my gap years. This is what we have. Alright, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you would like all of that fun stuff, and I will see you eventually. All right, peace.